and my man, Joseph Bowman. We are live. How you doing?
What's going on, bud?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can. You?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. I'm on these $6.99 headphones. So
Well, I'm just on what Apple issued, so we're good there.
Yeah, I got a bargain. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know you just got off shift, right?
Yes, sir.
How long is a shift? How long is a shift?
Depending on the need, typically 8 hours. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 8 hours. So now you work for the Centerville Police Department.
Yes, sir.
And so do you have a particular title? I don't know how that works.
Just basically a patrol officer.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you the dude.
And I have to start off saying, just because of the way my TikTok had brought some.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but go ahead.
My views do not represent Centerville Police Department. They are of my own. So
Very good.
I will say that, but yeah, go ahead.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm glad you got that out of the way. Apparently, you have had to do that before.
Yes, sir.
And say that Joseph Bowman's opinions are that of Joseph Bowman and not necessarily of the police force. And I'm sure that Shannon and the others
they appreciate
that, and they probably already know that. But it's good to get that out of the way, because in all honesty, some of the things we're going to talk about are just going to be your opinion, not only as as a police officer, but as a civilian as well. Of course, you own a business here in Centerville also, Average Joe's Gym, shameless plug. And so I know that a lot of people seem to be enjoying that facility. I've been in there several times. It's really it's a good facility for a small town, especially. I know you put a lot of work into it, a lot of pride, do a lot of training as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I wanted to, reach out to you and maybe discuss just a little bit of our current, I hate to say racial climate, but that certainly is a part of that. But our current social climate, obviously in the aftermath of the George Floyd death, and then everything that's happened since then, and every day it seems like it changes. Somebody told me a couple of days ago, they said, every day you wake up, you wonder which chapter of Revelation is getting ready to, be unveiled that day, because things seem to be changing so quickly.
Yes, sir.
And I know, I know a lot. I think I know pretty much all the police officers here in our community, both the sheriff's department and the city, and respect every single person, men and women. I feel like you guys do a great job. But I know that obviously this situation, and there's been others as well, this is just the most recent, and it's very tragic. It's very tragic at so many different levels, from the time that Mr. Floyd died to today, and everything that's happened in between. And it's put everybody under a bit of a microscope, whether it be racially, but certainly with regards to law enforcement. And I've known you a good long while, respected you, and I know that you have, I don't know if for lack of a better word, you've had your foot in the Black community for a long time as well. I know that you've got a lot of Black friends, worship with Black folks from time to time, as do I, and I think you and I probably have a very similar perspective with regards to the racial part of it, and probably have as many Black friends as we do white friends. But I wanted to talk to you just for a little bit about just sort of your opinion and your perception about some of these things that are going on from a law enforcement's point of view. Now, so how long have you been a police officer?
Police officer, been a police officer for about 2 years now. And prior to that, I've got about 10 years Department of Corrections experience. So total roughly 12 toward retirement. So
yeah, you're working that way. You got a little ways to go, don't you? Yeah.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. So can you tell me just initially when have you seen the George Floyd video?
I'm gonna be honest with you. And this is I've listened to what people have said about the video. The still images, especially the one with the officer sitting there on his neck, it honestly disgusted me to the point where I didn't watch the video. And here's the thing, what really upset me more than anything, and honestly, I think we try not to rush to judgment. I really do. But whenever I see a man comfortably sitting with his hand in his pocket on another man's neck, and I can look through underneath the car and see his hands behind his back, I know if you're comfortable enough to just kind of keep your hands in your pocket and just be chilling, I think you've been there too long. So my initial reaction, I've heard through other people talking about how there was a man in the background possibly pleading, saying that they gave you an opportunity to get in and you didn't, or why didn't you do it? Or I don't know. Clearly the guy resisted arrest, right? And
according to some accounts.
Sure.
Yeah,
according to some accounts,
yeah.
Let's be correct on that. So according to some accounts, he resisted arrest, and he didn't. I guess he got put. They were trying to get him in the vehicle. That's where the resisting happened. He went to the ground. My problem with this whole ordeal is that once you regain control of the suspect, all right, this isn't personal, right? We're hired to do a job, like you're hired to do a job, like that man that had the unfortunate experience of no longer going home had a job at some point in time, and we all are hired to do a job. And my thing is like, I don't take this personal. I'm going to do what I need to do to go home, all right, because I've got a family, and that's my first and foremost. That's my obligation, right? Is I'm going to go home by any means necessary. That's my attitude every day, and that's all there is to it. Now, with that being said, we're not trained like that. This dude, he was in cuffs, right? This isn't and here's where I get under a lot of people's skin with this. This isn't a black and white issue. This is a right and wrong issue. Okay. The officer was incorrect. This isn't the first time that this has happened, and this is unfortunately not going to be the last time. And that's the hard fact of it. Any death in custody is tragic. Any wrongful death is not only tragic but unacceptable. Okay, when we're trained in positional asphyxiation, which is where you have them on their stomach.
Explain.
Right?
Explain.
Okay. So like years ago, like we used to be able to hog tie people, right? If they were just like, unruly, like kicking and all this crazy stuff, and they got to a point to where they posed just as much of a serious threat to themselves as they did to others, you would, in a sense, hook their legs, you would hook their arms together, and then they would be on their stomach. Well, the problem with that is by them laying on their stomach, they're fatigued, and as they, their own body weight laying flat on concrete or asphalt or any hard surface for that matter that has little to no give will eventually, to breathe, it uses muscles. And as you fatigue, you can no longer, just if you were lifting weights, you can no longer use those muscles. Eventually you will stop breathing.
And that's just under their own weight. That's not with nobody on top of them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's just being on your chest for a long period of time.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody who thinks it's easy, pull your legs and your arms back behind you so you can't disperse your weight, and try laying on your stomach for that long. And then imagine 2 or 3 grown men on top of you.
Okay. So one time that was illegal. That was a legal police maneuver. Legal.
Well, it wasn't. It's not that it's legal. It was a way to control, right?
Okay.
Until more light was brought toward the positional asphyxiation that we stopped doing that. Like that was stuff that was done in, all I could do for at that time was prison, right?
Okay.
So we're taught. I know that's been taught for years, that we have to recognize that once these guys are under control and they're on their stomach, we're taught how to get people up, right? You're taught to roll them over onto their rear end. They tuck a knee. We then help lift them together. We don't just jerk them up, because unless they're just flat out resisting. If at this point in time they're cooperative, we have a certain way to get them up so that it also protects their shoulders, because they're in cuffs, right? Now, a lot of times we'll leave you on your stomach. If you've resisted like crazy, we'll leave you on your stomach long enough to search your pockets and things like that to make sure you're not an immediate threat. Because once you get up, these guys, sometimes they're bucking. You know, like this dude, toxicology came back that he was on methamphetamines and fentanyl. So, and he was a fairly large guy. If you've never rode that ride, you don't understand that ride. You know, you're talking about people who now have some sort of superhuman strength, and they're going crazy, you know, and so they're hard to control. So when you see a guy that's being controlled by 2 or 3 officers and somebody goes, oh, it don't take that many, try to control a human being. A lot of mothers have a hard time controlling their toddler in Walmart.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like you see them dragging them sometimes, you know, because they're not, you know, so these guys are hard to control. However, and I say however, because it's inexcusable, you know, and I may get heat for saying that, but the bottom line is right is right and wrong is wrong. And once you've got this guy under control and cuffed or whatever, hey, look, we got to get him up. Yeah. And I have yet, like, I know that the community is disturbed, right? I get it. I really do. I've yet to meet an officer that agrees.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like we all know it's against our training. You know, you're never taught to just rest a knee on the neck. I mean, I'm 320 pounds. If I dropped a knee in your neck, you probably would never walk again.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to be mindful of that. You can't just do that stuff.
Yeah, it's almost as if though, and I don't know a thing about any of this, but it's almost as if though he just completely closed the police handbook on appropriate measures and just decided, I'm gonna do this how I want to do it. No, all the while knowing that there are people there with phones recording him. And as you said, it's very evident that he almost in a very narcissistic, this is my world way, puts his hands in his pockets and just says, what are you going to do about it? And so, so obviously, I'm with you. I've not heard one police officer on any show, on any website. Nobody is justifying what this dude did. Nobody. He made a really, really bad decision. What was the motivation for that? I have no idea. So, in your opinion, once Mr. Floyd, whether he was resisting or not, I understand that if he's resisting, this makes this more complicated from the police officer's perspective. But he is handcuffed at some point. So obviously, at that point, he gets handcuffed. They should have been able just to essentially pick him up by his arms or whatever, right, and get him in the car. And put him in the back of the car, shut the door, and then if he's kicking or whatever, he's, you know, the door's shut, he's contained, and you have to wonder. And again, a lot of this is whatever video you happen to watch or whose perspective you're listening to. Of course, I've heard from several different ones who seem to be there that there was maybe 3 or 4 other officers standing there, right? And maybe one of them was saying, look, maybe you need to get off his neck. He's saying that he can't breathe. He gets to the point that he's calling for his dead mother and that type of thing. Sure. And so, you know, it depends on who's telling the story. But, you know, I think I heard a police officer say that, well, you have to also understand. And let's say whether it was being videoed or not, obviously the video was the nail in the coffin, so to speak. For the police officer, the nail in the coffin for Mr. Floyd was the knee to the neck that ended his life. But you have some police officers said you don't understand that there is a certain culture. Probably, and I'm not saying that it's this way in your police department, the one that you're a part of, or whoever's, but that there might be this, hey, you don't overstep your bounds of a fellow police officer if he has got a situation seemingly under control. That you don't go in and jerk him off of that guy and say, hey, man, you're doing this wrong. You're killing him. And there's a certain code. So, I mean, how would you answer that you have to?
Well, okay. So I can answer that yes, there is a code, right? All right. So let me explain that a little bit. There are a few things that we have to do. Number one, we took an oath. Serve and protect everybody. Whether you like me or not, you love me or you hate me, you're in trouble, I'm coming. I don't go, oh, that's so-and-so, I'm not running emergency traffic and risking my life while they're over there getting beat to death. That's not when I decided to put on the badge and I became the protector, you know what I'm saying, and the public servant. That's when I decided to do that. So now, when it comes to the brotherhood, sisterhood of what we have here, there is a culture there. It's you have to, and like I said, and I will start this off before my words get twisted. I will start this off and say, again, I don't support these actions, because we have to police ourselves too. Because, Devin, if you and I are wrestling a man, he punches you in the face and you just go into, hey, you woke up today a man before you woke up an officer, right? And that man hits you in the face and you go back, you're in survival mode, you do what you know, and you kind of get a little out of control. It's my job to reel you in. Hey, brother, look, we're good. We're good. You know, calm down. Pull them off, whatever we need to do, right? With that being said, there is a brotherhood, because the people that wear this badge, when it comes down to it, with the exception of a few amazing, outstanding citizens out there that will put their neck on the line, we're all we got when it comes down to it, right? So we're the ones going to these dangerous calls together. We're the ones that risk our lives together. You know, it's kind of like, this is basically home front military, right? So you look at the amazing bond that our men and women who serve have whenever they go overseas and they are in combat zones together and their lives depend on each other doing their job. You know, that's what we deal with every day, okay? So we have that. So sometimes it's hard to overstep that boundary and call somebody out on it, but at the same time, it's still necessary. Nobody said any of this stuff's supposed to be easy, but it is necessary. You have to. Whenever you see something, you know, we've all talked about it. You see somebody losing control, hey, look, let's rein them back in. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what we do.
You mean a fellow police officer?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to. You have to. There's, you know, there's it's going to happen. We are still humans.
Yes.
We are held to a higher standard. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Because we are entrusted with the public safety and enforcement of these laws and upholding your constitutional rights and so on and so forth. So we're held to a much higher standard. We also receive training for things like this. So we have to understand as fellow police officers that it is our obligation to step in. Now, with that being said, we're trained to do so. Rodney King taught us that.
Sure.
When the bystanders were also, I forget the word, but basically were like their certification cut, disbarred or whatever it's called.
Sure, yeah.
But, you know, they were fired, and not only are you fired, but you're no longer allowed to be a police officer. You know, you're now a custodial engineer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're doing something totally different now because you stood by and watched another officer beat a man senseless. So we've been taught that. That's standard police training, that you can't allow that stuff to happen. Because I'm telling you, like when I went through civil liability, which is, if I remember correctly, a whole daggum week of training is in civil liability. You know, we go through all the criminal liability, but civil liability, they're like, hey.
So by definition, so folks understand, is what? You say you're going through civil liability, that means?
Well, that means like every little move you make that you can be sued over. You can be financially ruined for it, right?
And it's a very litigious society that we live in, so you have to be very careful. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll litigate over anything. So the thing is, you know, we're taught against this stuff. I had somebody come on one of my posts whenever, because I've passionately argued this on Facebook, and I've tried to be reasonable with statistics and things like that. But I had somebody come on and say, well, you know, Joe's a part of a small town community, so he doesn't understand. Listen, we all go to the same training academy in the entire state. The only people that don't are Metro Police Department and some of the other metropolitans that can afford to train their own. But for the most part, you know, like I'm right there with Clarksville. I'm right there with Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, Montgomery County, all those big departments, Williamson County. We're all in this together. So just because we police a small town doesn't mean that we can't leave tomorrow and go police a large town.
You're policing it the same way. It's the same thing that you would do in Murfreesboro.
It's the same laws.
Yeah.
We uphold the same TCA codes. We go by the same ethics. It doesn't matter where you are. The job is just maybe more frequent in larger areas, but it's still the same job. A domestic assault is a domestic assault is a domestic assault.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter what location it's in. We have to handle it accordingly. But getting way off subject, but the bottom line is we're taught this. It's in training. We have been taught against allowing officers to lose control, and we've never been taught to lay on a man's neck in 9 minutes. This ain't the first time. Now listen, Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, it was Dallas. And this is where I'm going to get a little touchy with some people. Dallas was a group of white police officers that laid on a white man's neck and back, and they did it for 14 minutes, caused him to die in that position, and made fun of him while they did it. And they thought he went to sleep. And whenever EMS, you can see on the video, when EMS got there, they were like, what the hell are you doing? Right. He's dead. But that made local news and then died off real quick. I'm also really cautious about the amount of division that's going on in this country, because police brutality, these unexcusable and unfortunate incidents that do happen, while they do happen, and each one is tragic, I'm not taking away from any one. Each one is tragic. They are not the normal by any means. Yeah, if we look at, I saw one statistic, and it varies, but you look at 350 to 500 million contacts every year with the police. And we're not even talking about traffic stops and casual encounters. We're talking about calls. 300 to 500 million calls. And you're talking about, I think between the two majority races here, you're looking at 23 people were killed unarmed. Now, we're not even talking about justified or unjustified. We're talking about unarmed, right? As far as these were unjustified. Let me correct myself. 23 unjustified. Every one of them tragic. Should have never happened, right? But it happened. I joke about this when I say that you are more than likely to get eaten on dry land by a shark. It's just not normal, and the statistics show it. It's inexcusable when it does happen. But look, police contact, this isn't normal. You think about it. Everybody needs to do their own soul searching and really think about the contacts they've had with the police departments. Okay? Metro Nashville, it disgusted me to watch them treat Metro Nashville the way they did when Metro Nashville just got through with the tornado victims going above and beyond for their community. And then to turn around and have obscenities written on their car and destroyed. And I watched one officer, when he yanked a guy off his car that was stomping it, get beat by the mob. And this dude's doing his job. You're destroying your own taxpayers' dollar stuff here. You know what I'm saying? And it was just, I don't know. I'm real passionate about it because I'm on both sides of the fence here. Because I understand the community. I understand that they're outraged, and I also understand why. Okay, and I don't know. Go ahead, because I'm getting.
This is exactly what I wanted. This is great. I mean, it's and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I know that you're just not just a passionate police officer, but you're just a passionate human being about what's important to you, whether it be physically taking care of yourself and what you eat and working out and that kind of thing, or protecting your community. So, in your opinion, and I don't want to put you in any tough spot, but
sure.
if you're on that scene in Minneapolis and a fellow officer is on the neck of this man for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, whatever, but about 3 or 4 minutes into it, what should those other police officers have done?
All right, we've got it under control. Let's go ahead and get him in the vehicle, and let's get off this scene because there are too many people here, and this can be unsafe quick.
How do you get him off of that man's neck?
Okay, so the only other, if I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, and I'm going to say that maybe he wasn't malicious, maybe he was negligent. Okay?
He who? The police officer.
The police officers that were on this man, right? So we're real focused on my man on his neck.
Yes.
But all 3 officers on him, any one of them can be the cause of the positional asphyxiation. I believe that was the cause of death. I'm thinking it was. But
Okay.
anyways, anybody on top of you is going to cause you a hard way to breathe. That knee in the neck just didn't help. And that was the photo that shocked the world, right? So the bottom line is, if I'm any one of these other officers, that maybe these guys are in tunnel vision right now, right? Maybe they only see that this dude is insane. He's losing his crap. We are having a hard time controlling him, right? Maybe they are just in tunnel vision. So I'm going to go tap this man on the shoulder, and I'm going to get him up, and I'm going to say, hey, let's get this guy up. You grab a shoulder, I grab a shoulder. Direct his attention, right? Try to finish the job we started. We started the job of getting him in the vehicle and getting him on the way to jail. Let's finish that, right? Because we've got him in custody. We've already won. There's no need to continue. It's like beating a man when he's down. If he wants to fight at the jail, then, hey, when the cuffs come off, baby, let's go. You know, that's a different ball game altogether. But while the cuffs are on, you are in custody. This ain't personal. Like I said, there's no need to continue with it. Now, if he's fighting you in cuffs, which happens, I've had it happen to me, hey, but we're taught to go up with him. You know, I can fold you in an L position and walk you. If you're willing to walk, if you hit the ground, then we'll just sit there until you stop throwing your temper tantrum. But I'm going to at least sit you up.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. We can't leave these guys on their dadgum stomach. There doesn't need – I get so frustrated with, there needs to be more training. No, there don't. We're training. I mean, how many different ways do I need to be told not to leave a man laying on his stomach? Get him up. I don't need to be told anymore. Okay?
So again, just by virtue of them having Mr. Floyd on his stomach, by policy, he shouldn't have been on his stomach very long to begin with, right? Forget the knee on the neck.
I can't speak on policy,
okay.
Right? But
for
our training, once you've gained control of this guy, and he's cuffed, you've searched him, make sure there's no immediate threats, empty his pockets, all that stuff shouldn't take you but a minute or two at most. Go ahead and roll him over and sit him up, right? You can have a conversation with him. You can gauge his level of resistance at that point in time. But come on, man, we got 4 or 5 officers on scene, baby. He's going to go into that car, even if I've got to pick him up and pick his legs up and toss him in. But he gets to live.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not
Yes.
talking about, we've got to pet him and we've got to make sure he's okay. Look, this dude is high. He is jacked up on Mountain Dew. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm getting at is this dude is a handful as it is. So even if him laying on his stomach, if they didn't feel comfortable picking him up, sitting him up, hey, you get a shoulder, I get a shoulder, y'all get legs. Let's put him in. He can buck and he can do whatever he wants to. Just lay him in the daggum truck and then try to sit him up in there. You know what I'm saying? Or at least roll him over on his back and just ride his rear end to jail. You know?
But he's alive. That's the big thing, man. That's the stuff that we get caught up on. And like I said, and I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to keep hammering it home to anybody who thinks otherwise. The statistics show that this is not normal. This is not normal police encounters. I don't care what anybody says. Statistics are statistics, right? We trust them in every other aspect in life, but whenever it comes to something we don't necessarily 100% agree with, we want to kind of turn a blind eye to it. You know what I'm saying? And the bottom line is there's still facts, and the facts show that this isn't a normal encounter. This is an unfortunate event that shouldn't have happened. And this officer, here's the thing, and here's something that people don't understand, and I don't expect them to if you've never had either a run-in with the law or you don't understand the legal process. But the guys were fired, I think, immediately, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they were fired within that day. Perhaps, I think so, yeah.
And it took a couple days to bring on charges.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm going to tell you how this works. anywhere else with any other crime. You got a high-profile crime, hey, we're not going to just go knock on your door with a warrant for your arrest. We're going to go bring it to a grand jury. Grand jury is going to get together. They're going to make sure we got the probable cause we need, because we're going to skip that preliminary hearing altogether, right? We're going to go straight to grand jury. Grand jury is going to indict, and you're going to go to trial. That takes a process. Now, Minneapolis, I don't know how often the grand jury meets. Around here, I want to say it's like once every couple of months. I know with COVID put a lot of our grand jury cases off. Well, we had them in April, but they were cut out. So our next ones were in June. And I think that was the holdup with the fella in Atlanta, when everybody was like, well, this happened in February. Why are we just now seeing this? Well, if it was a murder case, I'm pretty sure they were trying to bring it to a grand jury, right? Because you want to have your ducks in a row before you go charging people, especially with something serious.
Sure.
You don't just want to have an officer passionately writing up a warrant and going, hey, we're going to do this, and then it gets thrown out on a technicality. That's what people don't understand. If it gets thrown out on a technicality, where's the justice for George Floyd or the other young man that got killed, and stuff like that? But so that's a process in of itself that folks sometimes don't understand, that takes time.
Yeah. So I heard I had a buddy to come and speak at our church back last summer, and he is from Murray County, and he was talking about how that he and some of his fellow black pastors, black pastors, met on a fairly regular basis to try to discuss how that they can improve racial relations in Murray County, that type of thing. And he said that one of the black pastors told him, he explained how that, for instance, that as black parents have to have a very special talk with their, we'll say, black children who just started driving, 16, 17-year-old black kids. They have to have a different talk with their kids than what I might have to or you might have to, because they're black. And he says we have to explain to them that if you get pulled over, white, black, red cop, yellow cop makes no difference. If you get pulled over, there's a certain way that you need to conduct yourself in that car when you get pulled over. You keep your hands where they can be seen. You make no moves. You look straight ahead. You say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. In other words, he said it's different. And I've told several folks, I've never had that conversation with Kaylee or Jordan or Ruby. Hey, if you get pulled over by a police officer, this is what you need to do, because your life could be on the line. So here's what I want you to do, because we got just a little bit of time left. I know you're tired. I don't want to keep you up on. I'm a black person, let's say, and you're talking to me as a police officer, and there'll be lots of blacks and whites that will watch this, I'm sure. But I'm a black person. So as a police officer, whether it me, I'm a black parent with some, my children have just begun driving, or whatever it may be, I need you to help me to feel better about this situation, and help me to feel better about how a police officer views me as a black person, just in general. How can we fix this? And I know that's a tough. I mean, I guess if anybody,
it is a tough question, because
yeah.
you're talking. I'm raising a black son. I have, three out of probably the five closest people to me are African American, and I've had the fortunate pleasure of intermingling with the different demographics, and so like having that conversation. Because see, whenever you were saying that, I was thinking about my own son. And here's the thing: I teach my kids that you need to be respectful. Period. Right? If an officer's pulled you over, you've done something, right? Whether you agree with it or not, in their eyes, you've done something. And if you haven't, hey, take it to court, because this is your Fourth Amendment right we're talking about, right? But on the side, and this is something I do tell people that argue with me, and I'm not talking about black or white, I'm talking about people. When you argue with me on the side of the road, look, this is already a dangerous spot. this isn't the place to argue. You want to argue in court. Okay. I'm not pulling you over just because because it's fun, because every traffic stop we do, the two most dangerous things that we do as police officers are traffic stops and domestic violence calls. Okay. Those are the two, hands down. Statistically, we'll get killed on a traffic stop faster than any other situation. Point blank. It's the biggest unknown we have, right? So any officer that walks up to your window in general is extremely on edge. Okay. And they should be, unless they're getting complacent, and usually complacency kills, right? So, we're having, as we walk forward, we're clearing your car visually from threats, right? And if I can't see something, or if your windows are too dark, I'm going to ask you to roll them down before I continue to move forward towards your B pillar, right? So we're always watching. This isn't I don't know how to make I don't know how to make a black man feel comfortable.
Right.
I know how to make a man feel comfortable in general by saying, listen, yes, if you want to put the officer at ease, if it's at nighttime, hey, listen, we ain't got nothing to hide, right? If it's at nighttime, flip your interior lights on, roll down your windows if you have dark tint. If you want that officer to be a little less on edge, show them, number one, you don't have anything to hide, right? And I'm not telling you, hey, let the dude go through your car just because he wants to or whatever. That's totally up to you. You have a right, okay? But what I am saying is by having your hands visual, we're taught to control hands first. So if your hands are all off in your pockets, I'm immediately going to control that. You've got me on edge. If you're digging through things, you've got me on edge, because we're shown so many examples of where you going into your console comes out with a firearm that goes through my mouth, right? So we're taught all these scenarios of what ifs so that we do pay attention. So as a man in general, or a woman, or whoever, if you're getting stopped by a police officer, my biggest, you don't have to be, oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, no, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. I don't know. And like I said, I only speak for me, because there are people that wear this badge that shouldn't have it. There are people that were probably, bullied throughout school or whatever it may be, and this is their get back, right? I'm going to show the world that I'm big and bad and I've got all this power. There are people like that. There were people in the prison that I used to work with that we used to say they're going to get somebody killed, or there's people like that wear this badge. I'm not saying it necessarily in our department, but in general, right? There are people that shouldn't be, just like there are people that work at your local factory that probably shouldn't have that job. Okay. Sometimes they slip through the cracks. There are more checks and balances with being a police officer, like background checks, polygraphs, things along those lines. However, they still exist. These people that get an ego, and sometimes it's deadly, right? So, like I said, I don't speak for everybody, but I treat people how I want to be treated, right? So first and foremost, I walk up to you on a traffic stop, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm Officer Bowman, Centerville Police Department. The reason why I pulled you over, is you were rolling a little fast back there. I got you about 14 over, right? Whatever it may be. I just talk to people, right? Because I already know, hey, you and I both been pulled over, right? I assume.
Oh, yeah.
I've been pulled over a lot. I used to be a process server. So we were always trying to beat the clock. So I got pulled over and got handed tickets by state troopers like it was candy at Halloween. So you're getting pulled over. It's already a bad day for you, right? You're already, as the driver, you're already on edge. So we know that. So everything I'm doing to interact with you is either A, going to make your day worse or make your day better. Okay? So I'm not going to be, excuse my language, I'm not going to be an asshole.
Yeah.
I let the stop dictate itself. If you are cool, calm, and collected, I'm going to be that way. If you start acting like I have no right to be here, then, we're going to have a different talk. Sure. Right? But I've already explained to you the reason why I pulled you over. I have to by law, because I have seized your Fourth Amendment by stopping you. Right? So I've explained why I pulled you over. Again, the side of the road is not the place to do the argument. If you get a ticket, hey, look, if you don't agree with it, go to court, right? Just go. Explain your side of the story. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it don't, right? There's a big problem if we get caught lying. So we're really, really discouraged against lying. It's
Yeah.
it's against our oath. You know, we stand on stand. We also take another oath. You know, we swear to these statements, and if we're caught lying, you know, we might as well toss our career, because there's not a DA that's going to touch a case that we have. Oh, he's a liar. Yeah, you might as well toss that ticket. You know, so once we do that, I believe it's called Brady rule, but I'd have to double check. But once we do that, you know, again, it goes back to that higher standard. So yes, a lot of times a judge will take our word for it, because if we're caught lying, that's a bad day for us.
Yeah.
You know, so
Sure.
there's a lot of checks and balances to make sure that we're not doing that. Okay. But with that being said, I think it's hard to get somebody to feel at ease on a traffic stop anyway, because it's just ultimately an uneasy experience, right? I think the officers, whenever they come up to the window, they don't have to be so robotic. You can be robotic with your checks. You can make sure that your safety is still first. Absolutely. But when interacting with the person in general, you can bring stress down significantly. You know, and it's not to me, it's an individual basis, right? You know, some of the most respectful people I've ever met in my life, and some of the people that I respect the most are African American.
Sure.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with anything other than that individual, their upbringing, etc. You know, I don't sugarcoat things for people. You know, I treat you accordingly. If you think I'm not that great of a guy, that's probably a reason behind it. But I treat people accordingly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a really tough question, because, like I said, I also raised an African American son, and
Yes.
and I love him with all my heart. And
Yes.
it's the thing is, it's like, matter of fact, my middle son, Landon, I told him, I turned on the lights, because I got pulled over. Even as a police officer, I got pulled over by a state trooper leaving town, and it was nighttime, and I was in my Suburban, and I turned on all the interior lights, because I know how that feels, right? So I turned on all the lights. Well, Landon reaches up there and turns the damn thing off, and I said, "What?" I said, "You better get that back on." You know what I'm saying? I explained to him afterwards. I said, "Guys, listen, this job is hard." And, you know, and I told him the dangers and stuff like that. So next time I do that, you don't touch. Right?
That's a really good tip. I'll say this. That's the first time I've ever heard that. And if the folks who watch this don't get but one thing out of this entire deal, it's, hey, when you get pulled over next time, especially obviously at night, turn the interior lights on, right? And do you,
Sure.
It's best to maybe keep your hands either on the steering wheel. You don't need to be moving around a whole lot, right? Really, until the police officer gets to your side of your window.
Really? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no, you know, sometimes we can tell, but I mean, they're called furtive gestures. I think it's what it's called. Anyways, it's where you're jerking around and you're moving, and man, we're watching, because number one, that car is rocking, and number two, you know, now I'm really on edge, because what the heck are you doing? Either you're stashing something, or you're reaching for something that you shouldn't have. Occasionally people are pulling their wallets out, and we can see the difference in these movements, right? But the best thing to do is just to simply, you know, stay cool. You can keep your hands, I mean, you can keep them in your lap. You don't have to be like a robot, but just keep them visible. The night thing, look, I think the only people that honestly have a problem with that are people who have something to hide.
Yeah, no question. Well, Angie and I were coming through Kingston Springs the other night, there on that straightaway at where the high school is at. And it was at night, and she had told me 5 seconds before, look, hey, because her brother lives there, she said, you better slow down going through here. They'll get you. They'll get you. No more than she said that. I meet a little SUV. He whips it around and gets behind me. He doesn't turn his lights on, but he's right on my rear end, man. And I get up there and make a turn. Sure enough, he lights me up. I pull over. And as soon as he pulls me over, I go ahead. I know what he's going to ask for. He's going to ask for my license. He's going to ask for my proof of registration and my insurance. So I'm getting that stuff out of the glove box. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, should I be doing this? Because I wanted to have it. I would have my window down. I had it laid up for him when he got there. But I thought, maybe I should have waited. I shouldn't have been, and it worked out fine. He let me go with the warning, thank the Lord. But I just never thought about the procedure really of how to go about that. And just simply turning on the interior light is a really good tip. I think I'd never heard that before.
It is. And if you got really dark tinted windows, roll the windows down, right? And just it's kind of like a how would you feel in this situation if you were approaching a car unknown?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
how would you want it? A lot of people don't care how we feel, and that's fine. If you don't, then hey, it is what it is. But you know, like I said, we're humans just doing a job too, and you know, we make mistakes. Like I said, we're held to a higher standard. Some of these mistakes out here that are being made are, I hate to use the word unforgivable because I don't agree with that. But at the same time, I believe that they are very unfortunate and just never. I think sometimes people are either like you get some instances where officers are really scared in that moment, and rightfully so.
Yes.
You know, like looking at the Atlanta shooting here recently, you know, and we're kind of waiting to see how that happens with the officer getting his, you know, fighting with the DUI and getting his taser taken, and the guy's running, and as he's running, he turns around and points it at the officer, and the officer comes up and uses lethal force, you know.
I'm not familiar with this situation, but
I think it literally just happened 2 days ago.
Okay.
So, but without getting into that too much, you know, there's certain things that we're trying to do.
Here's what and we're gonna wind this up here in a second, but I do try to understand. And look, there's a couple things that I cannot understand. Number one, as much as I want to try to see from the black person point of view, and I'm trying my dead level best, and this has really caused me to take a lot of self-inventory and to try to understand as best I can. But I can only understand that so much because I'm not going to be black, and I'm not black. No more than as much as I want to try to understand how a police officer might feel in these traffic stop situations or rioting situations or whatever. As hard as I might try to understand how you guys might feel, I can't because I'm not a police officer, and in all likelihood, I will never be one. So what I feel like in my little old simple-minded way of just as a Christ follower trying to love everybody, I feel like my job is to try to help for us to find some balance in this, to say, look, not all police officers. Fact of the matter is, a very, very small minority of police officers make bad decisions at bad times, and that guy made a terrible one. No more than, you know, so not all cops are bad. We've heard this before. Not all, you know, black folks are bad. It's just the way that it is. And so it's unfortunate that we have these, and as you threw out those statistics, if that's true, if there's 300 to 500 million police officer encounters, and if there was 25 deaths, whatever, those are 25 people that did not get to go home to their family. But statistically, obviously, as you have said, it is not the norm. It's just not. And so to try to put yourself in these other positions and say, gosh, what would I feel like if I was a black person? What would I feel like if I was a police officer? How afraid would I be, you know, when I'm making this next, you know, I pull this person over, they're some tags that are not from this community, don't recognize the car, and maybe as you're pulling up, you know, you got a kids that you want to go home to, you got a life that you want to go back to, and I could see how that even though you have all this training and what you hope, I'm assuming, is that the training kicks in. You're not having to think, well, what should I do? The training just kicks in.
It can be muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory. And what you hope is that it's the correct decision. But God bless you, man. And I you know, I hope that we all pray for our police officers because, you know, you never know from minute to minute, I guess, when you get that call and you're rolling down the road, am I going to get in a situation where, you know, I may be the one they load up on a gurney. And I can't imagine. And God knows you're not doing it for the money.
No, $14 an hour is not. We do this because we want to.
100%. And I was going to say, of all the police officers in this community, and I can only speak to Centerville, Tennessee, because it's where I live, and you are the guys and gals that I know. I from top to bottom, great people, just simply want to do what it says on the side of your car, to serve and protect. You know, you're protecting us. And I certainly believe in my heart that you guys, you know, are doing that. You're doing it to the very best of your ability. You want us to go home at night to our families, and you want to go home at night to yours too. And that's the best end result and scenario for everybody involved.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, man, I appreciate you taking the time. There's just so we could talk about this from now till doomsday, but I just
Sure.
wanted folks to be able to hear just a little bit of something from someone who has to wear that bulletproof vest, who has to, you know, go out into dangerous situations at any given notice, and realize that, and I think you said it, that you guys are just human too, and you do make mistakes. You know, you're going to make the best decision you can, given the circumstance. And I know
Okay.
you pray that you always make the right one, and we
Yes,
do
sir.
too. Yeah. Well, buddy, I appreciate it. And
Sure. And if you, I know there'll be a lot of comments on this, I'm sure, and because everybody's passionate about these topics.
Yeah.
And if you get enough, you know, of the questions or what people want to know, and you want to do this again, just holler
Yep.
at me. We'll do it, and you can write down what you want to ask, and I'll give you the best personal account I can.
Okay, that's what we'll do. And I think that'd be great, because if it stimulates conversation, again, just something as simple as turn on your interior light. Some other questions may come out of this, and we may very well do that. But you're, again, as I told you, very well spoken. And, you know, I've learned a lot, and I think folks will learn a lot from you been listening to this, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
Cool.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you. I love you. I appreciate all that you do, and all your comrades who do the same thing. We value you and appreciate what you're doing. And anyhow, we want you to take care.
Yes, sir. Love y'all too.
All right, buddy. I will see you soon. If I can figure out how to get this thing to stop recording, I'll stop it, and we may talk to you later. See you.
All right, buddy.
All right, bye.